Good morning, everyone. We will just wait for a few more people to attend and join us before we kick into this. Good morning, Todd, as well. Thank you for joining us today. I will just give it one more minute, guys, and then we can crack into this for everyone. Okay, so welcome everyone, and this is the first Red Meat Pharmex training webinar. So obviously everyone is aware that we weren't able to run our in-person training, so this is going to be the next best thing for everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am Tony and I am the technical specialist here at Pharmex. Today we've made this webinar so we can still offer you that support and training. With the focus of today, it will be going through the monthly updates and updating forecasted events. It is really important to keep your files up to date just to make sure that your numbers will keep calibrating and forecasting to give you those realistic and accurate numbers going ahead so you can plan your season. I will jump in and actually share a quick PowerPoint presentation with everyone. This webinar is also being recorded as well. So for those of you who may have to jump in and out, this link will be sent to everyone following the webinar, and as well as the next 3 webinars that we are planning to do as well. So for those of you, I will just quickly share my screen. Definitely as well throughout the webinar, let me know if you do have any questions and just pop them into the chat box. We have designated a time at the end around 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on your questions. So we will go back through the file if needed, just to answer those questions you may have. So without further ado, I'll just quickly share my presentation with everyone. Okay, let me know if anyone is having a bit of difficulties with seeing my screen at all, and I will be able to sort that one out for you. So let me just quickly start this one. So as you can see, myself is having a bit of issues here, but it's no worries. So as I said, welcome to the Pharmex webinar. Today we will be going through, like I mentioned, a Pharmex monitoring overview. So this is through an example farm that has already been set up, with a focus on going through those main screens and data inputs that you will want to be hopefully updating at least once a month to keep your file up to date as possible for everyone else who may also have access to that file. We will, as said, we will have those questions at the end as well. For those of you who may not have actually seen Pharmex before or heard of much about us, so Pharmex is a modelling decision support tool developed to offer those New Zealand pastoral farmers the ability to get all those questions, ideas, all the data numbers that are kept in their head and on a screen to be able to just work through those different processes to get as optimised farm system as you possibly can, while balancing the environmental aspects, production, and as well as financials as well. There is quite a lot that goes in behind Pharmex, so it gives you a quick snippet of what may be, the different aspects and factors that you can input, which gives you those different reporting. So Farmex does drive through your feed management, so offering you that feed budget and as well as your animal management as well. So I have just had a quick note from Todd. You can go to full screen users. Right, thank you for that, Todd. We're now full screen. Yeah, so as mentioned, so yeah, going into your feed budget, it is one of your first data inputs that you will be looking at. So as you can see, it goes into your grazing management policies, your nitrogen applications. You can enter in your pasture growth, cropping, as well as your actual utilisation and pasture quality as well, which will determine and provide you the information regarding the feed energy of that feed that you're giving to your stock. Those inputs will drive the two main feed budgeting outputs, which will give you obviously your feed quantity and the quality as well. This will then flow through into the animal management part of the model. So that will take into account all of your stock policies, including your stock reconciliation, replacement and mating rates, your feed levels, your schedules, and as well as your mating targets and production weight gains as well. So that will once again throw down into your next level, which will give you your animal production reports and your feed intake demands as well. You do have three key main inputs or outputs, in Farmex, which will give you your main pasture cover, gross margin and profitability, and with the new addition of the greenhouse gas emissions as well. So that is still quite a new aspect into Farmex. So if you do have any questions about that, definitely let us know and we can go through that one as well. The next slide, if this is going to work for me, is getting the balance right. So to get this, obviously, this is where we will be looking at updating your financials, your production, and looking at your greenhouse gas emissions to make sure we're obviously being aware of everything and keeping it all in balance as well. So with that being said, I will, if everyone's happy, pop down into some Farmex for everyone. Like I said, guys, keep bumping through those questions and we will get through to those at the end there for you. So I hope everyone is seeing my Farmex screen now. If not, we will quickly sort this one out for you. Let me know if you guys aren't seeing my Farmex there and I will sort that one out. If not, I will carry on. So when you do first open Farmex, guys, this is going to be the first screen that you do see. So this is what we call our Farmex cloud. So on the left-hand side here, you will see all of your active farms, and with following in the middle, where all your your files will be stored. We do have this yellow base monitoring file. So that's where we do keep all of our key realistic data. So everything that is going on in farm, which then you will see down the bottom here that you can have the option to create scenarios. So Tom is actually going to be running through those on Thursday for everyone. So make sure you join in on that webinar as well. But for the time being, just for today, we will just be focusing on this monitoring file here. So we'll just crack into that one. Okay, so as you may not see before, my screen is not working, but that's okay. All right, so the first screen that we will look into is actually our pasture cover screen. So this is going to be one of your main screens that you will be looking at when you do come into Farmex. So obviously to look at your feed budgets, you're going to be wanting to look at how much feed supply you do have versus the demand. So these two aspects are shown here on this top screen, the top graph, with the green line showing you obviously your pasture supply you have and the grey line showing you the stock demand. So this screen here, you can take into account any of your cover measurements, which is what we will be updating today. It is quite important to add in those actual measurements when you do collect them, as it will help reforecast the future months and help you with that feed budgeting process as well, in case you do need to, in some situations, get some more feed in or get some more stock just to balance that feed supply to demand ratio. So in this session, what we're going to do is actually update this current file, and we will add in 2 measurements. So to do this, all we're going to have to do is select this new measurement tab, which is in the center of the screen. And what that will actually do is produce 2 new dots on the green curve, which will show us our actual measurements. So to be you do need to be mindful of this. It is quite easy just to keep on the selected measurements. So just when we are adding those new measurements, just to make sure we do hit that new measurement tab, which will create like a default date and everything. But for this situation, we're actually just going to update August and September numbers. So, and to do that, we're just going to alter the date here in the drop box, and we're going to select, for example, the 28th of August. And on that date, this farm reached a cover of 2,035. So we're just going to add in a farm average cover. As you can see, you do have the option to split that cover over the 2 different blocks that we have. But for this instance, we are just going to use it as the farm average cover. So once I hit enter, you'll see that there's now a new blue dot on that cover, which Farmex will take into account and then recalibrate your upcoming months. So that is the first one. And we're just going to do the same process again, new measurement, which creates an automatic cover. And we're just going to change the date and do the September measurement for the 15th. So this one, there was a bit of an increase to 2013. Once again, using the farm average cover, which has given us a 3rd dot here. This grey line down the bottom, I will just explain a little bit more, is so that represents the stock minimum demand for pasture. So obviously, as you go along and updating the file, that line will also readjust itself based on your stock policies, your transactions in and out, their production targets. So obviously, if you're wanting them to have a higher weight target, that demand will increase. However, if they were to be fed more supplements, that line will drop because they aren't actually relying on pasture itself to hit those energy targets. So do keep in mind, this is just a really good snapshot of seeing the difference between your supply versus your demand for that one there. Definitely keep popping through those questions, guys, if you do have them. If you need something going back over, we're quite happy to hold fire and to answer those or to repeat anything. The next screen that we will actually go through into, is our pasture growth curve. So the pasture growth is actually found at our block level, which is actually quite good, as obviously the different sections of your farms, so you may have your flats to your steep, like this farm has, will have their different growth rates. You can't expect your flats to be going the same as your hills, so it is quite good to pull out the difference and just get that bit more accurate measurements going on there. So all I've done is just clicked on the flat rolling block and selected the pasture growth screen. So as you can see, this one will take you through the monthly growth rates, with the top potential growth being nearly 8,500 kgs per hectare. So a good thing to point out in this screen is that for those of you who may be actually setting up a new farm, if you're not actually sure of what pasture rates you are doing, Farmex does have a default library that is set up the top here, which enables you to select the area that you're in, and which will automatically populate the curve for you, which you can go and adjust as you get more data to enter in your model. So because we have selected those and entered in those pasture cover measurements, what it has actually done in our growth curve is change these months here, which is the August and September, which we have those actuals in, to yellow. So that will lock those cells, and as we have entered in those actuals, that's what's happened. So we won't actually need to readjust those growths, as that is what's actually occurred. So that's why you will see that solid green line showing that that's what's actually happened, and the dotted green line is the forecasted months to come. So this screen will also be updated as you enter in more and more data. For us, this file, what we're going to do is actually update October, where it's currently saying it's predicting 34 kgs of dry matter per hectare. For this instance, if we are going to be expecting a lot of rainfall, we might say that the last 10 days of October, we're actually expecting a higher growth. So what we can actually do is just open up that October month and select the last 10 days and just directly input the 38, for example, increase into the last 10 days. And what's that's done is just increased the predicted forecasted growth for that month there. We are also going to update November, but instead of updating the last 10 days, we're just going to lift the entire month from 39 to 40. So not a massive change, but what it will do is, once again, will help your model become more accurate, so you can forecast as realistically as possible. So as this screen is also updated, it will once again flow into that top farm level, into your pasture cover, and help that screen also update itself as well. We are going through this quite quickly, guys. So definitely, if you want any more information, just let me know. We do have a few main screens to get through, so we'll just be going through the main screens that should be really updated if needed, like we say, on a monthly basis. And that just makes it a bit easier, so you're not having to do a bulk upload over 5 months' time, as it's quite easy to miss data, which may be quite important. So yes, following the once your cover measurements are in, if you need to update your pasture growth screen, we can actually just jump down into the crops. So this farm here, for example, has one crop at the moment on its flat block, which we can see is our pasture silage. So both of the block screens will look the same. So you will have all your pasture growth, your crops and nitrogen data inputs under both the flat rolling and the block. So exactly the same, just obviously we've just split them into the different areas of the farm. So for this example, what we'll actually do is, instead of creating a new crop, which is done just by selecting the new crop tab up the top here, which you can see there is a whole lot of default crops that Farmex has already populated in there for you. We're actually just going to update the forecasted crop that we thought we were going to pop in at the start of the year. So now that we're closer to the time and we can see what that yield, for example, might do, or we may have to shift the dates, we can actually just go through an updated forecasted events as well. So even though you've modeled it, let's just say we're creating this at the start of the season, and we're now in the middle of the season, we can actually go through and update those forecast events, and that will just help, once again, keep your file up to date and as realistic as possible, especially if you're wanting to pull those reports at the end there. So for this activity, what we're actually going to do is make sure the pasture silage is selected, and you'll see the bottom detail box come down the bottom here. So you will, no matter how many crops you will have, there will be a detail box for that specific crop just be populated down the bottom here. And if you do have more crops, they will be listed in the center to the left hand side of that box as well, so you can easily click through those ones. For this activity, what we're going to do is we're just going to update the current details. So at the moment, this one is to be set to go in at the end of October, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to push that date out until the 15th of November. So for this, what we're going to do is just select the drop down button next to date in and select the 15th of November. Do keep in mind that for these dates in and out, it is actually quite important that you do keep in mind that that date in should basically be when that gate closes, so the stock are no longer grazing that area, and then that date out should basically be the reverse, so when that area comes back into rotation. So that will just impact your pasture cover screen and how much pasture is actually available to be eaten. So if you need to go through a regrassing period, or just closing it up for like this one, which is your pasture silage, obviously there will be that period of time from that gate closure to when your crop is actually harvested. So just keep in mind of when you are selecting those dates. And we will also change the date out from the end of December through to 13th of January as well. So that will automatically calculate the days out of rotation as well. As you can see, there is a total yield, which gives you the tonnes of dry matter, or you can do it per hectare basis. So we're still wanting to keep that 2 tonnes, but if we may experience a lower yield in total, we can just update either rule, and that will just automatically calculate how much it's doing per hectare for this one as well. If you do have additional costs than what it is selected on the default, you can override the financials to do with all of these events as well there. We are going to go on to the nitrogen screen next. So with Farmix currently at the moment, the nitrogen fertilizer is only applied to the pasture. So if you do, for example, apply fertilizer to your crop area, it is quite good to include the expected increase in yield in that total yield, which you've just entered, and as well as that crop cost as well, just so we can keep an eye out and define where that fertilizer cost is coming from. So yeah, any fertilizer applied to the crops, just make sure that is included in the yield and the crop cost rather than in the actual nitrogen screen. With this screen as well, just before I do move on, you do have a couple of views here. So this is just the plot view that you're looking at the moment. If you do want more of a table format, all we have to do is just click that top table tab up there, and that will just give you the same information, just in a different view. Maybe easier for pulling out for reporting, which you can do by just selecting that print button. That will give you those options there. You can, for this crop, just select to move them around, just for preference. You can move them up and down. That won't actually do anything to the details. However, if you do move it forward and back, that will change those date in and out values as well. So just be mindful of that if you are having a play around with that. But there is that lovely undo button if you do need it there. So that is predominantly the crop screen. Anything that it is populated in the crop screen will flow through into your supplement inventory, which will allow you to feed that out to your stock as well. We will cover the feeding as well a bit later. But for now, we will finish off the block properties and setup. So that is, we'll just drop down one into the nitrogen. And as you can see here, we have already one nitrogen event for this farm. So as I mentioned before, nitrogen won't be applied to the actual crop itself. So Farmix has blocked out a certain area of the pasture, which is currently in the crop, just to give you that visualization of what is in crop versus what isn't. I will show you another function, for the nitrogen in the crops tab. Instead of always clicking a new nitrogen, if we like the settings that are set up for that certain either crop or nitrogen, we can actually just do a quick duplicate, and that will basically copy all the properties, which rate and response and duration in the area, and just hit that duplicate, and that will just keep all the details and gives you, it's just a quicker way to enter in that data. But otherwise you can just go through that new nitrogen event as well. So all I've done is just clicked on that first nitrogen, hit duplicate, which is now given me that nitrogen 2 to play around with. So for this one, I'm just going to keep all the details exactly the same, but just change the date that it's applied to the 17th of January. So I've just done it through the date drop-down tab, but you can just move it directly in the plot view as well to do that one. That 61 days is just a Farmix default. So once again, if it was a forecasted event and you've experienced a whole lot of rainfall, obviously that nitrogen may not have actually stayed in the soil or on the grass for as long. So we can just directly reduce or increase how long that fertilizer is actually in there being effective on the pasture. So this screen will directly impact your pasture cover screen as well. So obviously your response and your growth will be a lot higher, which is quite nice to, which Tom will play around with on through the scenarios as well. For this one, we do currently only have the urea or other. So You can write in the comments what type of nitrogen you've used. It is quite good if you're sharing a file, so you can identify what nitrogen was applied as well. So there is also the area that you can play around with and the total amount and the cost once again. So generally with all events, you will have the ability to enter in the actual values as well. So, but obviously if you don't have them and they're just a forecasted event, you don't really need to worry about that until you come up to that event and you do have those correct figures there. One more tip with this screen, if the urea is selected, that will actually come through and you can see the new reports here with the greenhouse gases that will populate into the greenhouse gas report, so you can actually see how much emissions is coming specifically from your nitrogen as well, which we can touch on a bit later on as well. So I haven't had any questions yet, so I am just going to keep moving on, guys. So definitely pop those in if you need. We are going to drop down into the sheep enterprise. So as you can see on the left hand side here, you have your farm level, your blocks, and then our mobs and our stock, sorry. So just to see our mob views, we can just click that plus that's next to that sheep enterprise here. So for this one, we can see that we have just our complete stock reconciliation, which includes all of our mobs under our sheep enterprise. Some people may have multiple sheep enterprises, either for trading or breeding enterprises. So it's quite nice to separate them, and that way you can see the financials and the emissions surrounding those individual enterprises. But just for this one, we do only have the one sheep enterprise, just to keep it nice and simple. For the activity today, we are going to just go through and update some of the ewe details. So to start with, so obviously we have our base properties, but what we're actually going to want to go into is our stock transactions. So that just means we need to jump down into our stock rec, otherwise known as the numbers screen. And here you can see that we've actually got some forecasted events throughout the entire season. That's just to be on the safe side, so we can get as realistic reporting as we can. So this farmer has estimated that they're going to have 9 deaths throughout the season. So we will actually go through and update a couple of those. It is quite nice to, as all these cells are basically quite similar, so we'll keep it just to 1 or 2 columns. You can directly just click on the cell and override that one figure just by typing in the number. Otherwise, you can see that once again, there's an event detail box down the bottom, which will enable you to select where that death has occurred. Either this one's currently just a random from the whole mob, but you can also select if it's one of the lightest or the heaviest ewes, if it's from an empty ewe or a ewe and lamb, which is quite nice, just to see those production reports as well. And if you do need to go into that amount of details, you can there. So this one, what we're going to do is, for this example, we've actually had 2 deaths occur in August. So what I'm going to do is just directly enter 2 into that cell, and that will just update your figures. And the same for September as well. So not sure what has happened on this one, but they just had a few more deaths occur instead. So now we've got 11 deaths occurring. For those of you who may not be aware, you will see the black and blue numbers on the screen. That is representing the black numbers are the ewes, and the blue numbers are actually the offspring and the lambs that are being born and weaned. So those blue numbers will automatically appear on the screen once you've mated your ewes, and that's just showing you the lambs that are still with this mob before they're weaned. So in that left hand or the right hand side, sorry, you'll see that 1246 being transferred out, and that's just the weaning event that's occurred. So there will no longer be any blue numbers occur. If you want a simpler view, just click on the ewes and then you won't be able to see the offspring in there. We will also actually update the sales, but for the sale event, I'm actually going to jump through into the beef enterprise. So the numbers screen for all of your sheep mobs and your beef, or if you have deer, they will all look pretty much exactly the same as this. Obviously your opening, your born, your deaths, your buy and sell, and as well as your transfer in and out columns. So this one's before I jump into that side, this is actually a pretty good example of the transfer out event. So this has occurred automatically, but it just gives you a good example. So that transfer out column is showing you that there has been 2 winning events, as there has been animals from one mob leave and go into another one. So this is just showing that both the ewe lambs and the ram lambs are now leaving their mums and going down into their own mobs, which you can see on the left hand side. There's a ewe lamb and a mixed lamb mob there. So that's just good to keep track of the stock movement on your farm if needed. But you can also see, obviously, there's a transfer in, which shows you that there is 127 ewe hoggets aging up into your ewe mob as well at the end of the season to flow through into the start of next season as well. So we'll just go through into the beef enterprise to do the sale event. So once again, just clicking on the plus that's next to the beef. And for this one, we will click into the steer calves. So this is a really nice and simple screen. So obviously they don't really do breeding on this, beef breeding. So there's just been a one purchase event in September of 250 steer calves. But what's happened on this farm, this was a forecasted event, and they didn't actually buy in those animals until November. So we can basically just either delete that one out or delete that one out, or actually just changing the date that's in that detail box once again. So that's what I'm going to do for this one. It's from the 1st of September. That event didn't actually happen until November. So I'm just going to drop down into the 10th of November there. And so that's automatically moved where that buy event is showing on the stock reconciliation. So we can actually also apply the weight and the cost at which we actually bought those animals at now that that event's occurred. So we will update those ones to be, instead of 190, which what we predicted to buy it, we actually only bought them at 135 kgs a head. So that is going to change your model quite significantly. So that's why it is quite good to update those figures, even if they are forecasted. When you do get those updated numbers, as 190 to 135, that's going to have a huge impact on your demand. So yeah, definitely keep in mind there, all these screens will be linked and then will flow into your reporting. So just be mindful of those ones, guys. It has been quite common if you've updated all the financials, but you may have just forgotten about one single date, and that can change your whole file. So just be mindful of going through and updating those events as well. We are also going to, for this particular event, is update the actuals associated with these animals as well. So at the moment, we predicted that, it was predicted that these ones would be bought at 485. These ones we actually purchased for $455.70. So we can just directly type into that cell, and that will automatically calculate the kg, dollars per kg, and the total for those animals that we purchased those for. So that will flow through into your financial reporting as well. So after we've updated those ones, you will see in the live weight screen down here that the live weights have now been updated as well for these. So we can update these live weights quite quickly, either through adjusting their purchase weight, which will show you this one in here in November, and then the expected growth rates that these guys will have. So if you aren't actually sure what they will be doing, you can just leave it as default based on the breed that you've set. Otherwise, if you know that they will be actually growing at a quicker rate based on the feed that you're going to be giving them, you can just directly type into these cells and increase those live weights, maybe even if it's just a couple of points of the kg, that will automatically lift that curve and then flow through into their demand, what they're going to need feed to reach those targets there. So I'll just quickly check one of these questions. Yep, so we do have a question from Laura asking where those default pricing and the scheduling do come from, and how often it's updated if you're not manually doing it yourself. So that's actually something that we update at our end. So we do have red meat pricing schedules, which we get sourced from Beef from Land New Zealand. So we go through basically when they release their updated schedules, we will go through manually behind PharmX and update all the schedules that do appear in your PharmX. So obviously we try to update that as often as we get those values coming through. I will touch on that schedule at the end. Sorry, Laura, and we'll quickly just finish the live weight screens first. And then after we've done a few other updates, I can go through and show you where, for example, your supplement inventories are and your pricing, where that comes from as well for all your defaults. Jumping back into your live weights. If you've had an event occur, obviously a weighing event, that will help give you those accurate and realistic weights. We're just going to enter in a new weighing event, which is just clicking on that new tab. It will just select once again a random default date. Well, today's using the 14th of December, which is quite handy. We are actually going to change the steer calves. Let's just say the 30th of November. And we will say that they are 165, just bear with me, which is going to be a lot heavier than what we expected them, which PharmX expected them to be, sorry. So that is actually shown by that difference by 21 kgs from the model. So obviously that is a rapid increase in growth. So I know that's not quite realistic. So if we go 140, 146, we can see there, sorry guys, just bear with me, that was just an example, that if we have just weighed our stock and we've got their average live weights, we can pop in what the mob was, and it gives us the difference from the model. So when we do enter in a live weight, this could be for your 2-year steers, for example, as well. That will tell us the difference, and we do actually want to click on that auto calibrate button. And what that will do is that will just make PharmX pull in that actual value and recalculate what is their expected growth rate to be, and that way it'll flow through once again the energy demands to hit those targets as well. So definitely, if we are entering in live out values, hit that calibrate button, as it's just a quick and simple way to get PharmX to update itself as well. So it will benefit you at the other end when you're trying to work out their feed budgeting as well. So we will just do another quick one in your 2-year steers. So we can see that the 2-year steers, obviously they're only there for 2 months, and that will be because of they are being sold. So this is the other way of updating it. So your live weight. So at the moment, these guys are to be sold at 265 kgs of carcass weight. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to update the sale event to have them being sold at 278. So that is quite a big difference from the original 265. And these ones will be sold for $16.50 a head. So I'm just going to quickly pop these ones directly into the sale, and you'll see these through the financial reports as well. So obviously, because there is that quite a big difference, just looking at the modeled weights and the actual weights, we will have to just review those live weights again. And just to make sure that they are hitting those weights. So there's a couple backwards and forwards. So this is your other way of calibrating your live weight. So 265 carcass weight, we want them to be around 278. So we can actually just manually increase by pulling up the red dots or grey dots, here. And what that would have done is, if we just check on that live weight that's actually pulled that carcass weight up to be more realistic as well. So it's your other way of calibrating your live weights, but definitely add in those actuals as soon as you get them, really. And that will just help, once again, update your financials and your production as well. So that is your live weight screen. So it's quite nice and actually simple and tidy to use. It'll be the same for all of your mobs pretty much. Obviously with your sheep, you will actually have, you can add in, as much as I won't like to say it, but your shearing event in there as well, if you do want to take into account their wool. And what they will actually do is help with the energy composition of where their feed is going to. So I know it's not worth a whole lot at the moment, but just be mindful that part of their energy will be going through to making that wool. So that will be part of their energy demand, which is actually shown if I click on this one here, by their fleece on their live weight screen as well. So it's quite handy just to be mindful of these girls. Once again, the used live weight screen looks exactly the same as the beef, so not too much difference. Obviously, just got to be mindful of what is actually being shown there. What we will actually do now, before I jump into the pricing schedule, is show you the feeding out. So once we've adjusted, like our pasture cover, we've gone through and updated our forecasted stock transaction. So if we've bought in more, sold more, if some have died, our weaning rates are different. We need to make sure we update those, as well as our live weight events. We can actually go through and update what we're feeding our animals as well. So our feeding is just at the top of the farm level. So I've just clicked on the farm name, and it's actually just located one below the pasture cover curve screen there, just under supplements. So what this will do, this will just show you all of any crops that we have on our own farm, and it will show you that from the one pasture silage crop we have 30 tonnes of silage being produced. So this farm, we've actually fed out some pasture in May and June, and July and August. So this is what we kind of call like a wrap crop, saying that we've produced it in the middle of the season, we've fed out some at the end of the season, but we've actually still got some on hand to be able to feed out in the start of the next season. So that's why you can see in the bottom here that we have we've fed 20, out of the 30, which gives us 10 to close with. But we also are opening with an additional 20 from the last season. So that means we can actually feed out a bit more. So what we're actually going to do is just update a few of these. This may have been that you may have some more left on hand. If I've updated the crop yield, this will also be updated with those numbers there. Or if you've actually bought in some extra feed as well, we can just enter in directly into the allocated cells to match when you bought those ones in. That's just by doing the new purchase button down the bottom here. With Farmix in the red meat version, at the moment, the feed is actually allocated based on the demand of the animals. So we can't actually select which mob they're going to. It will just automatically go towards those ones that need the extra feed to meet their targets. So do keep in mind that it is generally across the whole board of animals that you have, but we'll keep updating. So for this just quick update, let's just say in July, I actually fed out more. So I can just once again manually type in overriding that cell or through the detail box that's down the bottom. And we fed out more in July, so we're feeding less out in August there. So it is quite a quick and simple way, and you can see at the end of that month how much you do still have on hand, if any. So at the moment we can see that we don't actually have any feed after August until that new production crop comes in as well. So if you do have multiple pasture silages crops, they will come through and populate into what's being produced as well in the screen here. So it's just a real nice screen to look at. You can actually see a summary of all of the crops you have and to see the financials attached to these crops as well, which is just at the top here above. So my screen has been cut off at the moment, but you will see you'll have the inventory tab, the feeding tab, and the summary tab, and then followed by the financial tab. So at the moment, none of this crop is actually being sold, so you will see that there's nothing being generated under the sale income there. So it's quite a good snapshot just to see that everything is lining up as you think it should be looking. And so you can identify which crop may be out or needs to still be updated as well. So clicking back into supplement feed, we're not actually going to do a whole other lot of changes. If, for instance, that we've had a whole lot more pasture growth and we're not actually reliant on the pasture silage crop and we don't need it or don't need to store it, and we haven't fed it out, we're just going to just delete out that forecasted feed and sell an extra 10 tonnes. So once again, directly type into that cell or select the new sale tab down the bottom, and we're just going to sell 10 tonnes of feed. So I'm not sure what we're going to sell it for, so we're just going to leave that override box empty and just use the standard defaulted $210 per unit cost for this crop, and that's automatically generated your financial sale income through your financial tab as well. So they are all going to be linked and updated, but I am mindful of time as well. We've only got an hour today, so answering Laura's question, how you asked where the default pricing is coming from. So yep, so we are going to stay in the top farm level, and that's going to be under your schedules tab that's up the top here. So you will see that there is a few schedules that we've automatically created. So it's the auto North Island prices. So that's what we updated our end. And you can see the prices per kg of the different stock classes as well. And you can go through your sheep, bull, beef, and there's even deer on there as well. So yeah, like I said, that those are updated once we get those updates coming through as well. So that's where all the back information is coming from. But once again, if you have your own custom schedule like this farm does, you can just select new schedule and enter in those prices there as well. But once again, we want to keep those as accurate as possible, so your financials are actually giving you a good idea of what's going to be coming in your season, so you can make those changes to be proactive rather than reactive for those scheduled prices as well. It was asked as well the costs for your crops. Some of you may have custom crops, but just to review those, what's actually pulling through into your profit and loss report, for example, that's just once again going into your data input into your database. And what you can see here is that under our pasture silage tab, we can see that our buy and sell unit cost is that $210, and the per unit cost is the $140. So you do have that ability to go into that much detail if you need to. Once again, if you're just forecasting and modelling for the first time, it would be quite nice to keep the defaults unless you do have those accurate numbers. But yeah, once again, it's if you do have the information, feel free to pop those in, which will flow through down into your lovely profit and loss report. So I hope that answered your question, Laura. Give me a thumbs up or ask me again if you want me to clarify that one for you. But that's where those prices and schedules are coming through from, is the scheduled tabs, which we can upload for you. So after you've done all your monthly updates, whether your pastures, your crops, your nitrogen, and your stock numbers, we can see now what our reporting may look like. So actually, before we jump into the profit and loss, it might be quite good just to review and check that your pasture cover following those changes is still looking pretty feasible. If it's not, later down the season, you may actually have to look at what those forecasted events are and pull those back or pull those up, depending on where your cover may be sitting. But this farm is looking quite comfortable based on the supply of pasture and the animal demand. So that's when we may look at the situation, which Tom will go into once again, about lifting stock weights up if you can, but we won't touch on that today. So this farm is looking pretty nice and tidy and pretty comfortable there, and we can see that they are still making a profit in our reporting as well. So that is just real quick, one of the main profits majority of people will look at, but obviously there is quite a few reports down on the site available for you to go through and look at, which will all be updated as you go along and put in more information as well. So definitely go through and see those. You may just look at, you may have forgotten to do one change, and it's quite clear sometimes, especially if it's your feed, or you've forgotten to enter in that sale event, that your revenue may not be looking as expected and may be quite daunting. So yeah, it's quite a nice check as well, just to make sure you do go through and update when possible. So I will actually open the floor back up to you guys to give you about 10 minutes to ask me any questions, or if there's any screens that you'd like me to go back over. I believe there was one regarding urea, so I'll just quickly check that now. So if you've added, so this is from Tim, if you've added an area to nitrogen to replicate crop area, will that be included in the greenhouse gas report? If you've added. So I'm assuming that, so you're not applying nitrogen to a certain area. Sorry, Tim, you may just have to give me a bit more information regarding that question. But for your greenhouse gas result, as mentioned, that is actually a report that you can have. So down just at your top farm level, once again, you will see your greenhouse gas and your carbon balance report. So at the moment, because I've selected that nitrogen event, that second one to be from urea, we'll do the same for the first one. That will flow through and say that your 25.5 tonnes total is from that urea hydrolysis. So it will identify those different nitrogens as well. And it's quite clear that based on the right-hand side, you'll see that little bar graph with the dot plots, that there are two extreme peaks during the season, and which will show you that those are the nitrogen events causing that increase. So we've just had another one that's similar to the silage process for baleage done on the farm and feed on the farm. So yes, exactly. So silage and baleage is pretty much the same. You can enter in that crop, and that will come through into your supplement eventually, which you can go through and feed out as well. So sorry, yeah, before I jump into that one again, for your nitrogen, that will, if that urea is selected, that will flow through and identify as the urea hydrolysis that's feeding into your greenhouse gas emissions. Otherwise, if it isn't identified, it will still come through into your nitrogen report as well. Yep. So if you do apply urea on crops, that should be included in your yield. You may do it to capture the urea through your greenhouse gas. You may increase the rate, but Tom will go through a whole lot of greenhouse gas scenarios as well, which he'll be able to show you the difference, modelling specifically for impacting your greenhouse gases as well. So those questions, yeah, we'll go into a bit more detail, but just for this monthly update, I'll keep it quite simple, but we will answer that question shortly for you as well. But yeah, those ones looking at your greenhouse gas and carbon balance, sorry, if you do want to see where it's coming from, or if you know you've applied more nitrogen, you can either increase the rate to represent that, which you'll be able to see where it's coming from and the process that it takes to give you that number as well. But yeah, we will do a bit more of a breakdown in the other scenario webinars, but no, that's no worries. We understand that you're new, which is, it's great to hear some questions. But yeah, definitely we do have a few different guides and everything which we can provide you as well, but this whole recording will be sent to everyone. Yeah, regarding the greenhouse gas, it is, yeah, it's obviously new to everyone in the industry, so once again we're finding our feet as well, trying to provide you guys as much data and information as we can, but at the moment, yeah, we're limited to what we are given, so there is going to be a few backwards and forwards between the nitrogen events and how to apply those, but yeah, just keep in mind that the nitrogen is only in this model applied to pasture, and the costs associated should be included in your crops if you do apply those as well. But yeah, to get those flowing through into your greenhouse gas report, you could look at adjusting the rate or the response of that nitrogen application, just to take into account that there is going to be some impacts flowing through from the crops as well. But the crops themselves will come through into the greenhouse gases as well. If you do look at it that way, during the season, you will see that big fluctuation, which will take into account if there's any crops being harvested. There will be obviously residue behind. So yeah, that is all calculated in that way. We can offer you a bit more of a breakdown of the calculations for the greenhouse gases, which we can make available for everyone. So we can attach that to the email that will be sent out after this webinar as well. So just to recap, guys, it is always going to be quite important to update your pasture covers, your growth rates if needed, your stock policies and events like your live weights, matings, if those are changed as well, and your crop and nitrogen events as well. And that will all flow through into your supply and demand management, your financials and your production targets as well. But with that being said, yeah, this webinar has been recorded. Our next in-person training will most likely be at our FarmX conference, which is held next March. We will also send you a bit more information on that through into the next email as well. But yeah, that's what we're looking for at the moment, which by then we will have a bit more information for you. So if you are interested, do rewatch this webinar and send it to whoever may need it as well, as a few people haven't been able to make it today, which is no worries. But yeah, that is basically the webinar all done for you. I hope it has been helpful. We didn't touch on every screen, just those main screens that should really be updated as much as you can, just to keep that model as accurate as possible. But I will leave it open for a few more minutes in case you do have any questions for me. Keeping in mind that Tom is also going to do a few more webinars, and that will break down really into those different scenarios and comparing your reports as well. So if there's any questions regarding your monthly monitoring updates, flick those through to me now and we can answer a few questions. But other than that, I'll just quickly leave it open for you. Yeah, so just put your hands up if you need anything, or if there's a quick report that you want me to go through. Quite happy to do that for you as well. Oh, we see one coming in now, which is quite nice. Okay, oh, thank you. That was just comment from Lachlan, so thank you for that. So we just had a suggestion. So your cover schedule setting on the farm properties. So you would have seen that the screen here. Presuming this is the one you're talking about there, Tim. So you can see here that there is the initial pasture conditions. So that's basically what this file will be opening at. You can see that there, you can see if you've got your pasture control, your percentage of green matter and your percentage of dead matter. So obviously that pasture control is if you're grazing all of your farm, you're going to have that control of having the ability to rotate your stock to control that. If there's a bit of an effective area that you actually, effective area, but it may be way down the back of the property, it may not actually be as controlled as you would like. So that's where you can change that different control level as well. But when you go through and select like your pasture types, that will come into play as well. In the screen while we're here, you can see that you can actually select your farm class or your schedules as well. But yeah, those pasture conditions are generally selected when you do go down and select your pasture type and maybe on your block level. So there's an option for that as well. And your properties for your blocks, so that's quite handy as well to break down to keep your file as realistic as possible between your steep compared to your flat blocks, which obviously one may be a lot better quality compared to the other, so it's quite nice to have that identification in there. So that's just once again a lovely drop down button, which these are all default through FarmX as well. So you do have that ability of controlling and readjusting that if needed. So I'm glad that answered your question based on your comment there. So it's no worries. Yeah, I'll give it one more minute. If you don't have any other questions, thank you once again for joining the FarmX RedMeat webinar. There will most likely be more of these to come. So definitely keep an eye on your emails, or if you do have any questions, would like to call us, you can just email FarmX, support@farmx.co.nz, or give us a call. So we're always here on the help desk from 7:35. So if you do need a hand, we would definitely be there to support you, even if it's going through a file review and helping you with these monthly updates. That's what we're here for. So just have one more comment come through. Looks like it's all been answered, I believe now. So yeah, without there's no more comments, guys. That is us for today, and yeah, keep an eye out for Tom's webinar on Thursday, and the dairy webinar will be this afternoon. So I hope you all have a lovely day. Keep safe with everything going on, and have a lovely New Year and Christmas as well. Thanks for that, guys.